September 8th, 2012, Saturday. The Alphas and Inferno appeared in a large hotel suite. Darkspeed was quick to look around at his surroundings. The others were like statues compared to how fast his power allowed him to move and think. At a desk to one side of the room, a man was sitting and reading some paperwork. Darkspeed walked over and looked at the paperwork. Zoological stuff. This must be Hannah's father, Darkspeed thought. He then found his way back to where he was standing when they all materialized. Darkspeed took his mark like an actor taking his place on stage and let his power bring him back down to normal speed. "Hannah!" Dr. Albrecht said loudly as he came to his feet. "Daddy!" Bioforce said as she jumped toward her father, who caught her in midair. "Call me Bioforce in front of everyone," she said softly into his ear. "Bioforce, then. Please introduce me to your friends." Bioforce introduced her father to each of her fellow Alphas and Coach Inferno. Virtuoso noticed he had a trained mental shield, the kind that only came from years of practice. His thoughts were silent to her. She could punch her way in, but that would be noticed. She remembered what her father told her about once being a superhero, and wondered what secrets Dr. Albrecht had to keep. "I know you all want to get to the HU headquarters, so I will accompany you there," Dr. Albrecht said. "I was thinking of ditching the HU and having dinner with you," Bioforce said. "Ditching? That doesn't sound like my daughter. No, you go see the HU, and I will have tea with you after. I know a little spot just a few blocks away. I saw you only a few days ago. You've never seen the headquarters. You've seen one building, you've seen them all. Now may be the time to spoil the surprise," Inferno interrupted. "Coach Connors wanted me to give him our travel plan as it developed. When he heard we were going to London, he made a call to the HU. We're being given a tour of the inside of the building." "See, you can't pass that up," Dr. Albrecht said. "All right, but I was hoping to get a souvenir while I was here." "It sounds like we may not have time," Bioforce said. "What kind?" "Something tourists wouldn't normally buy. I know a coffee shop near some old antique shops. It's in a rougher part of town, but somehow I don't think this gang would be worried," Dr. Albrecht said as he looked over the group of superheroes in training. He quickly wrote an address on a piece of paper and handed it to Inferno. "About how long would you be before you're done with your tour?" "We can teleport right there and be done in an hour or so," Inferno said. "I'll be at the coffee shop before an hour is up." "I'll see you there, Daddy," Bioforce said as she kissed her father. "See you there, Bioforce." Virtuoso looked into Inferno's mind and quickly touched hands with those next to her. The drill was fast and everyone touched quickly. Midas tried to speak as they teleported. "Nice to meet," Midas said in a hotel room. "You?" he said in a large white marble lobby. "Coach Inferno," a man in a suit said as he approached with a hand extended and a smile on his face. He didn't look like the other HU reps they had seen before. He carried himself with confidence. His suit was expensive and his hair was gray. Inferno recognized this man and was quick to shake his hand. "Mr. Secretary," Inferno continued, "this is Mr. McFarlane, the Heroes Union Secretary, and these are the Alphas I was told would be visiting," Mr. McFarlane said as he looked past Coach Inferno. "Yes, Coach Connors' team and my team. I just told them moments ago they would be getting a surprise tour." "Of course they will. But first, I would like to hear handles and powers. You first," Mr. McFarlane said as he pointed at Olympian. The group did introductions again. Then, the tour they were waiting for started. The HU headquarters were spacious, even royal. The command centers, the port chambers, the docking bays, research labs, offices, team wing, and other portions of the building were impressive. But the thing that stopped everyone cold was a seldom-traveled room that had glass cases lining the walls. The Hall of Superhero History. The team looked at artifact after artifact lining the wall. Olympian and she seemed to be the most mesmerized by the antiques in this room. The first cape worn by a flyer. It was made of layers of silk and had to be replaced periodically. The fastest it ever traveled was 175 miles per hour, Olympian said. The first ray gun. It had the capability of rendering up to 3 normal people unconscious at a range of 30 feet. "Wow, this stuff is old," she said. "Why were there so few powerful supers back then?" Midas asked. "This last century has seen the rise of the alpha-level super. Before that, there were barely any beta-level supers. Things are really changing now," Mr. McFarlane said. "Why now?" "We're not entirely sure, but it makes for exciting times." "Look, field phones! They look like Army surplus," Olympian said. "Look over here." Virtuoso had walked ahead down the hall and forward in history. A set of black and gold armor was sealed in a glass case. Olympian looked at the plaque attached and started reading the highlights. May 14th, 1950, a superhero calling himself Omni rescued an American luxury cruiser that had taken on water off the coast of Florida. He flew into Miami with the vessel floating underneath him. Spectators were awed by the 20,000-ton vessel floating in the air. Olympian stopped reading and looked at the armor. This is the armor he wore that day. The Alphas were silent as they looked at the armor. Virtuoso was the first to speak. I wonder if it was anything special. Midas felt into the armor and felt its properties. It's just steel, not even great steel, and paint. The shiny paint is just like you would find on a car. That's right, Mr. McFarlane said. Omni didn't wear the armor for protection. He wore it for two separate reasons. First, he was of the opinion that a secret identity was to be kept secret. I don't know of one time he ever took his helmet off. Secondly, his armor was a symbol. Everyone came to recognize his armor and knew that for citizens it meant security. Villains and evildoers, they came to fear this armor. What you see here is Omni's first version of the most recognizable costume on the planet. Wow, our uniforms are so much better. I can't believe how much, Midas said. Uniforms? You mean your grays? No, Mr. McFarlane, I mean the uniforms we've been making. Why don't you call them costumes? Mr. McFarlane asked. We just started calling them uniforms, she said. Mr. McFarlane shook his head in frustration and said slowly, Do any of you think you're better than Omni or those who fought in the Coalition's war? Of course not, Darkspeed said quickly for the group. Then listen to this. I've seen young people come through Alpha every few years with a certain attitude. It's like the attitude teenagers have when they think they're too cool to be seen with their parents. The attitude that they are too cool for costumes. Well, I'm here to tell you that the men and women of the HU who have kept this planet safe wore costumes. It's part of your history, he said as he pointed back and forth down the hall. The things in this room are to be honored. The superheroes that sacrificed themselves, the statues you walked past earlier, are to be honored. Do not separate yourselves from our traditions. Honor them. Become an extension of the history you see here. Be part of the continuity that is before you, that is now, and will be after you have placed items in this hall. Your actions now will write your history years from now. Embrace who you will be and make no apologies for being a superhero. Mr. McFarlane spoke with passion and held their attention while he made his case. Olympia nodded the whole time, understanding every point he was making. Sir, may I ask a question? Certainly. Does anyone know where Omni is now? That's a common question. The answer is no. We have an emergency means of contacting him, but for the most part, we have respected his request to be left alone in his retirement. You mean you can call him if the world is going to end and you need his help? Saber said. That would be a good example of an emergency, Mr. McFarlane said in a way that made everyone smile. The group then traveled down a little farther and saw the first team of 6. In one of the glass cases, it showed images of Vector. He wore white and gold and smiled in every picture that was taken of him. A newspaper headline in the case read, Super Betrayal. Did you fight in the Coalition's war? Bioforce asked Mr. McFarlane. I did. I was on what would now be considered a beta team out of Wales. I was their brain. Did you ever see Omni or Vector? All superheroes saw Omni. He was everywhere and always stopped by to help or boost morale. It's not like he would visit to have dinner or something. Omni was very busy during the war, and I never saw Vector. Almost no one did. Why not? Midas asked. Coward had other people fight for him. He led those who followed them to their deaths. They were all just pawns to him, pieces to be moved around, Mr. McFarlane said with disgust. He was that bad? Midas asked again. For instance, the war he tried to instigate between the capitalists and the communists. It started by unleashing biological warfare on Moscow and China. In the U.S., he poisoned water supplies and contaminated military bases with radioactive material to give tens of thousands cancer. He sowed fear and paranoia between the humans while he waged war with the supers. To him, civilian casualties were just a bonus. So much so that his followers planted bombs in populated areas to keep our attention divided, and that's just his declassified war crimes. He killed more than Hitler and almost destroyed civilization as we know it without a second thought or hesitation. Yes, he was that bad.